Welcome to this session, Unlocking ASEAN's Digital Prosperity. And a bit of context here, with more than 460 million digital consumers, this wonderful region of ASEAN is poised to be the fourth largest economy in the world. And definitely with its digital economy worth between $1 trillion to $2 trillion by 2030. Another second fact that we would like to highlight is supported by a young population aged below 35, an additional 40 million internet users annually. And everyone, including the analysts, saying that we are entering the age of ASEAN, and today we aim to unpack as well as to explore the transformative potential of the big deal, the ASEAN Digital Economy Framework Agreement, or DEFA. And our discussion will focus on how ASEAN members can, and also its people, enhance cooperation, foster innovative solutions, and address common challenges to achieve sustainable, equitable, as well as inclusive growth in the digital economy. And definitely let me waste no time in introducing our great panelists here. And ladies first indeed, as well as they are also the disruptors. At far left, on my left, Ms. Van Din Hong Vu, the co-founder and the chief executive officer of ELSA. And ELSA has won numerous awards, including being named a top 5 AI company by Forbes in 2019. And when it comes to expansion, she expanded ELSA's user base to millions of users worldwide, improving English speaking skill for non-native speakers through cutting-edge AI technology. And followed by Ms. Dalat Tanti Prasongchai, Chief Operating Officer and Chief International Business Officer at SCBX, and from strategic leadership up until operations, up until she's a driver, basically. And we have two most important prominent figures that no need further introduction. Pak Sandiaga Uno, Minister of Tourism and Creative Economy of Indonesia, and followed by Mr. Ivan John Uy, Secretary of Information and Communication Technology, Philippines. And for the record, well, both of them are also disruptors once upon a time, and technologies once upon a time. And we have Mr. Niraj Agarwal, Chair of the Asia Pacific region for Boston Consulting. And for those sharing insights on social media, please use the hashtag of AMNC24. And I would like to start this particular discussion from helicopter overview, a broad overview of the remaining road ahead, 2025, to conclude. We're aiming to conclude DEFA by the end of 2025. I would like to start with BCG, definitely, on Mr. Agarwal. Where are we exactly today in this journey of ASEAN's next phase of digital integration?
No. So good morning to all of you, and good morning to my fellow panelists, and thank you for having us here. Just to build on the point you mentioned, ASEAN is an economic hotspot. In terms of GDP, it's a demographic hotspot with a lot of young population. I would like to highlight a couple of other things. It's a very diverse set of industries which are there in ASEAN: consumer electronics, automotives, oil and gas, agriculture, packaged goods. The list is long. One other thing which is happening in the world of today is the global trade is growing slower than the global GDP growth. It has not happened for the last 35 years. We used to trade growing faster than GDP, but for the first time, trade is growing slower than GDP. And I'll come in a second as to why I'm saying this. The reason I'm saying this in ASEAN actually is the one place where trade is growing far faster than the GDP. So ASEAN is a true place where all countries want to, China wants to trade with ASEAN, US wants to trade with ASEAN, India wants to trade with ASEAN. So it's in the right spot from a trade perspective. So as BCG, when we do the analysis till 2030, 2031, in this block of 6-7 years, global trade will grow only by 30%, but the trade in ASEAN will grow by about 90%. So 3 times the growth in trade, and will add another 1.2 trillion on this trade. Now, why is this relevant to the digital DEFA? It is relevant because many parts of the supply chains in ASEAN are straddled across multiple nations. Each of them individually may be incomplete, but together they become really compelling. So there is real need for collaborating together. And our analysis shows that, yes, the digital economy will easily reach 1 trillion, but does it go from 1 trillion to 2 trillion? Clearly depends on how further along do we go on this agreement. No agreement like this is easy, but the economic imperative and the opportunity is clearly out there. So cross-border trade flows, all of that, clearly supply chains can be hugely integrated. And it's not only about that. I would like to highlight some other aspects. As technology moves further to blockchain, as issues like cybersecurity comes in, all of those could be important building blocks of this arrangement of tomorrow, because we don't need to be only embracing the here and now. We need to be ready for the architecture of tomorrow. And those all, blockchain went through a period of hype and bust, but now I think it's clearly out there. People can see the economic benefit of that coming through. So that's one other thing. The one last thing I like to conclude with is talent mobility. There's a huge need for, firstly, talent itself. There is a need for reskilling and upskilling talent. We are entering an era where a talent needs to go through 3-4 cycles of learning. It's not what we just learned in college and we can apply. We need to keep unlearning and learning new stuff. It's very critical in the world of digital. I'm sure my fellow panelists will talk about it. But also the talent mobility across these nations. The framework in many places is not fully formed, and that can also be a huge enabler. So I think with those, the economic imperative is clearly out there. ASEAN is a clear economic, demographic hotspot, trade hotspot, but DEFA can be a huge enabler for seizing the opportunity, and there are a few building blocks which need to be in place.
I guess straight away to Pak Sandi, maybe from your perspective, what really sets ASEAN's DEFA apart from the rest when it comes to global digital economy regulations framework?
Well, I know that digital economy has arrived in ASEAN when on my way to Shenzhen and then next to Dalian, my mom sent me a text asking, because she's 83-year-old, she want to create a content, and she's a teacher. She want to create a content that relates to some of ethical behaviors of younger generations. And this is an 83-year-old adapting to the new way of teaching. And this is truly hits home. When you see the digital economy framework agreement, DEFA could basically be the foundations of us working together. And increasing digital connectivity is key, not just building infrastructures, but also the human capital. We are in need in the Indonesian market, 600,000 a year of digital talents, and we cannot just fulfill from the basic education system that we have. We need the intermobility among ASEAN, and this is something with the economic growth, with the innovations, you could completely complement each other with this DEFA. Entrepreneurship is very, very important, Ash, because we know that there are pockets of startups in ASEAN, be it in Vietnam, in Thailand, and we could see best practices among different countries. Indonesia has large populations, but actually we also need some cooperations and collaborations in relations into creating new jobs. When you talk about prosperity from the digital economy, you are talking about good quality jobs. Not only just digital economy create more jobs than it actually replace, but through AI and through machine learning, Internet of Things, you could actually also create a better quality jobs that produce better productivity. Sectors such as digital transformations that we're doing in Indonesia very rapidly could also enable other type of transformations like green transformations. We're moving our economy into the green economy, and digital platform could really, and in particular digital services, could actually complement that. For instance, when we promote tourism, The Gen Z really like products, tourism products such as offsetting your carbon footprint. When you travel to Bali, you're supposed to plant like 60 mangrove trees, for instance. That digital transformations allow you to do that, be it online or physically you do it yourself. So I think stronger digital connectivity within this DEFA framework will need to have countries harmonizing their policies and regulations. And I think this is, my DNA is entrepreneur. I'm just new to the government. This is my 8th year being in the government, so I think like entrepreneur, I think we could do faster with working, collaborating with public-private partnership to improve our collaborations.
Yeah, so I think, Ivan, you have best of both worlds, exactly like how Pak Sandiaga Uno he is. When it comes to harmonizing, from the context of Philippines as well as the dynamic with other ASEAN members, how do you see ASEAN countries, ASEAN members harmonize their regulatory frameworks, definitely to facilitate a seamless experience in digital economy?
Well, the challenge within ASEAN is basically similar to the challenges within each country, and that is a lot of the digitalization has been siloed. Right. So in the Philippines, as technology developed, every department in the government did their own thing, and there was no really consideration as to what the other department's doing. So in ASEAN, among the 10 countries, it's a similar thing. And we adopted different standards, we adopted different systems, and the challenge is not exactly harmonizing them, because there are unique characteristics, whether you're talking about cultural, the dynamics in each country, but rather being able to collaborate by being able to connect and to share that information across the different platforms and across the different countries. And we can do this today because the technology allows it today. The cloud platforms, the artificial intelligence that would understand the uniqueness of each system, but at the same time identifying the commonality of the applications, the APIs that you can now develop. The world standard has changed, and we see, for instance, two dominant technologies on mobile platforms. That's the iOS and the Google platform. So a lot of our internal systems are now evolving towards adopting to that platform. And since those two platforms are basically standards worldwide, so we can utilize these common technological platforms now to adopt to a more interoperable system. We speak of digital payments, we speak of cross recognition of or cross verification of identity, which is very important in a national sense, but also on an international level. In order to facilitate better trade among ASEAN, we need to be able to validate whether the person or the entity that we're transacting with is an entity that is verified, that it's not a scammer or it's not a fictitious account. And once we're able to do that, then I think the facilitation of the trade would be much more reliable, more trustworthy. And once we build the trust, then I think the trade would just automatically come in. So DEFA definitely is the right step towards this goal. And we've been working very hard. Boston Consulting has been doing a lot of the spade work in helping ASEAN. I saw a while ago the deputy section in the room. Of ASEAN. So we are working towards that goal. There are, of course, challenges. Each country has their own different level of bureaucracy, of political exercises. So it's moving, not as fast as we would want it to be, but I think it's in the right direction, and we just need to be more focused and definitely understand the nuances of each nation, but the benefits that will be derived from this DEFA would be very impactful. Right. And it's not just for the more developed countries in ASEAN, but most especially for the less developed countries. I think that they will have the greatest impact when DEFA is finally approved.
Right, okay. But, given what we have outlined for the past 15 minutes, and I would like to hear from the disruptors themselves, maybe Ms. Vu. You know, the strategic intent is to establish a secure digital economy, and of course with enhanced connectivity. And looking from that perspective, from your, given your vast experience as well, and maybe what are the blind spots that we haven't really touched for the past 1 year? And now we have another, 1.5 years to go.
Yeah, no, thank you. So I think it's great to hear from a public sector and the government and in ASEAN is trying to push to this very first digital economy agreement across the region. I think from a private sector, I think it's a huge step forward towards allowing for businesses to expand easily in the region. I think I have the benefit of being born and raised in Vietnam, having a big part of our business in Southeast Asia, but also currently based in the US, in the Bay Area. I think the misperception from the West in the States was that, oh, if they want to take the business and expand to Southeast Asia, they consider it one country. They call it Southeast Asia as one. The surprise hit them when the moment they enter the region is realizing that, wow, expanding to Vietnam takes a very different skill set versus going to Indonesia and then going to Thailand and the Philippines. And we have the first-hand experience. We started out the business in Vietnam, but even so, as we have the same product needs across the region in learning English, taking the product from one country to the next country in our neighboring region is already a big challenge in itself. And I think as the DEFA can really unlock that seamless transition within the region, it's now allowing for the private sector startups like ours in the tech world really go fast in the region and then expand to other regions in the world. And that's really enabling us to move a lot faster, right? And a lot of the blind spots as we see, a lot of the challenges that we see in the private sector as we move and expand within the regions come from as tactical as a payment system within the region. Every single country, Vietnam in itself have very many different payment systems. And then moving to Indonesia and moving to another country. Now, it takes a lot of resources in the company itself. That interoperability is not there yet, right? So we have to figure out the resources that we have to take in adapting to all of that. And then comes the IP law, which is also very different. And data localization, some country require that and some country doesn't. And so we have to really be mindful of that. So I think DEFA is definitely, hopefully we move fast within all of the governments. But I think if it does happen, I think it's allowing us for the private sector to move and expand the business a lot faster, which then help us unlock a lot of potential in the region itself.
And you also actively involved in education, and definitely as a leader in the ed tech space. And we're talking about mobility of talent here. At the end of the day, the whole idea is to make sure that we manage to really enhance the strength and the power of the people there. And looking at the trend from a digital education perspective across ASEAN region, how can we address the gap? And maybe you can share across, as well as Ms. Dalat can share later, on foreseeable pain point, so-called. But prior to that, I think the education gap among within this talent digital space.
No, definitely. I think, as Mr. Rawa mentioned, I think to really unlock this extra $1 trillion, working in the edtech space myself, I strongly believe in that digital talent itself and the gap being there, right? And I think this is where all of us have to upskill all levels in all industry. I think there's a tendency to go towards a certain industry and upskilling that digital talents, but we have to bring the rest of the country and the region with us in order for us to move a lot faster. Otherwise, the digital jobs rise among the higher paying jobs, but it's leaving all of the other industry behind. And another part of it, as we were sharing in the back room, was as the digital mobility allowing for the talents to move across the region seamlessly and easily, language communication become very important as well. Right now, if you stay in Vietnam, the need for you to really communicate to another team in a neighboring country is a lot harder. But once the economy opened up and is allowing for all of us to move easily in the region, now the opportunity opened up 10x more, right? You can work in Thailand if you want to, and you can work in Indonesia to open up that industry if you want to, but without the right communication skill. And I'm not talking about the top level college grad, right? I'm talking about everybody below that as well. I think that communication skill become a lot more important. But the good news is it's much easier now. It used to be that all of this digital skill set is very expensive, which then go towards the higher paying jobs. Now with AI, with technology, with all of these open source resources, I think with the right investment from the government and of course the public and the private sector works together, I think we can easily move all of that opportunities down the chain and allowing us to open up that digital skill set a lot more.
At the same time as well, Ms. Dalat, maybe you can share the experience. There are a lot of talking at the same time with regards to number one is speed, number two is the bureaucracy behind it at the same time.
Sorry, so you...
The bureaucracy of, to speed up and to leapfrog from where we are today and to achieve a reality of DEFA by end of 2025.
Sure. So first of all, good morning, everyone. As I listen to my fellow panelists, I think a lot of thoughts come to mind, but just to answer back to the question, I think when we see the challenges ahead, as a largest financial group in Thailand, who we get, through our chief economists, we see the economic challenges that lie ahead for us and for the region. We look at what's really driving that, and we spoke about the real sector. We spoke about the potential unlocks that something like DEFA could drive in terms of digitalization efficiencies, how that could solve a lot of the trade flows. I think the other important aspects is how something like DEFA could enable more optimization of not just actual flow of goods, but we're really looking at flow of money, flow of currencies, flow of people, and we talk about talent, mobility, etc. And the reality is in the rail sectors, at least in Thailand, what we see is quite a dire situation of production levels really in trouble. So what could DEFA help with, right, through this digitalization and also transferability across the region is we are now looking at FDIs. We're looking at how do we attract foreign investors into the real manufacturing sectors, because as a banking institution, our concern is actually the income levels that are highly dependent on jobs in the real sectors. So how do we solve that, right? How do we think about agreements? And tourism is actually one area, Pak Sandi, where we see a bright shining spot for a place like Thailand. And with tourism, that can then provide, as you pointed out, some of the questions on how do you leapfrog? If we can really make tourism a key driver of economy for a place like Thailand, hopefully through that, it will then inspire, people who are coming to Thailand to then set up businesses, and therefore, almost create a kind of circular, kind of inspiration for more cross-region innovation, development, et cetera, et cetera. So coming back to DEFA why is this important? It's really about how do you make it easy for people to do such things? How do you facilitate cross-sharing of expertise, et cetera? And we cannot get away today without the power of data, the importance of data. When we look at AI, it's not really about the models, it's about the data. And if there is no clear, easy to understand frameworks on how do we actually work around that, country to country, I think it will hold us back, much longer than what hopefully something like the DEFA framework could. I don't think, you can count on, one framework or one agreement as a, kind of silver shining bullet to solve everything. I think it's, it comes down to really the power of coalition. I think what something like this, like a DEFA could do, is really harness how we work together as a region, in a really collaborative way.
Some would see the regulatory alignment would be one of those pain points. From the BCG perspective, maybe Mr. Agarwal could give that perspective on regulatory alignment across member states.
I mean, look, the benefits of this far outweigh the... So what happens in these situations is every member country will look at it from their vantage point. And I think the benefits in terms of improved access, inclusivity, the benefits in terms of empowerment, social mobility, the benefits in terms of improved resilience, and also to the point you talked about on the climate side, all of those are huge, right? And I initially anyway articulated the economic argument of going from $1 trillion to $2 trillion. So that's a collective benefit, right? Within that milieu of benefits, I'm sure there will be smaller places where individual member states could have some places where they feel they're not as disproportionate, right? I mean, and I think that's what the team, to be honest, is working through. And I have full support for the team. I think it's a tough issue, but I think to my mind, the one side of the dice is so loaded than the other side that you have to embrace the larger good and go on to that in that direction is what I would say. There are always some individual issues because each of these countries are not equal sized, right? Some of them are bigger than the others, so there is that angle which comes in. Each of these countries have different strengths, so there's that angle which comes in. But that's really how I will frame it.
We would love to hear what's happening behind the door when it comes to the negotiation. Maybe Pak Sandi and Mr. Ivan can actually give us the brave ideas and what are the challenges. But of course, with that, I think the reality of every ASEAN members have to go through. And speaking of which, we don't know what's coming when it comes to technology. One of the sessions that happened yesterday, I think Professor Denny Kwa, during his session, Confronting Global Risk 2024, put it nicely, in which he said the nature of interconnectedness somehow demands all of us to have the better ability to actually prioritize. And we can't focus everything. And there are things we should not jump at in order not to get distracted. So I guess from ministerial perspective, the one who's actually spearheading and leading all the negotiations behind the door, well, we're not there behind the door. Maybe Pak Sandi and Mr. Ivan, who wants to actually share the experience on it.
I do my morning jog every morning in front of the ASEAN Secretariat. And I look at the building and sort of like the image that came to me is not the hard negotiations among countries, but rather the shake hands, the ASEAN way, shake hand. You guys are familiar with it. So the ASEAN way is always, the very conformist and trying to have a win-win-win solutions. And in the DEFA situations, I think the most important thing, I think we address the jobs part.
Right.
We address the economic growth. You mentioned the numbers. But the things, I would say the 800 kilograms gorilla in the room is cost of living. We just went through an elections in Indonesia. And the theme of continuity actually prevailed. Pak Prabowo wins quite a landslide with the theme of continuity in addressing the cost of living, cost of education, cost of health, cost of food, the price of chilies, the price of rice, and how that the green transformations and digital transformations that we're doing is not going to add on the cost of living, at least to the mid and bottom part of the pyramid within each and every society on the ASEAN countries. So, digital trade under the DEFA must address how it would impact in terms of affordability of goods, services, educations that FU is doing, or fintech, banking. 70% of Indonesian SMEs have no financial assistance from banking or the digital banking community. So how do we address that? And payment. From here, I'm going to go to Cebu. I'll do some snorkeling, and then go to Singapore and then Batam. How payment is interconnected. We have to harmonize and sync all this payment system that benefits the SMEs and actually could lower down the cost of healing. Because the Gen Z, unlike people of my age, not you, Ash, but people my age only go twice, holidays, only the winter and the summer holidays, and we need to work. The Gen Z now, they do healing every other week. They go, otherwise I'll get mental stress. This is, I need my space. And then come Monday, I said, where are you? I said, I'm working from destinations. They're working from Bali, from Borobudur, or even from Bangkok, because it got cheaper to go to Bangkok than to Bali now. This is something that we need to deal with under the DEFA. Also, cybersecurity. This is something that as we move all our data into this cloud and digital economy, Indonesia just experienced one of the worst hacking attack into our government tech. So how do we address this under the DEFA? How we could use this cross-border data flows to enhance our cybersecurity. And finally, I think you mentioned about upskill. We need to also do the reskill and new skill, because there are new skill that links to the cross-border e-commerce regulations. How do you sell products in the Philippines, in Thailand, in Vietnam is completely different than how you sell products in Indonesia, services, and in Singapore. So these are something that I think DEFA could address within the interconnectedness and within the framework of the ASEAN way.
No, we haven't touched on the geopolitical part just yet. But when it comes to, Mr. Ivan, we understand the crux of digital economy is trust. And to build that trust, your technologies yourself, for DEFA to be a great, meaningful enabler for economic growth, what are the additional commitments besides whatever we have seen so far, FTAs? So what are the things that we need beyond just FTAs?
Well, I fully empathize with my colleague from Indonesia.
When it comes to Gen Z?
Yes, well, yes.
Is there any Gen Z in the room? I would like to hear the questions or comments.
It really has to be meaningful. Right. It has to be a meaningful, impactful, and what happens is, we can talk a lot about digitalization, about transformation, and yet if it does not directly improve the lives of the ordinary citizens, from food inflation to high costs of education, healthcare, and many others, then people become pessimistic. They feel that technology is just increasing the digital divide, and that they become more alienated. The urbanized areas in the country are reaping all the benefits of digitalization, while areas that are farther from the epicenter becomes more alienated. So similar to Indonesia, and I think to many of my other colleagues in ASEAN, we need to expand really the reach, and to do so, we have to invest in infrastructure. We have to ensure that connectivity is there, that no one is left behind. Philippines and Indonesia shares a big challenge of we have thousands and thousands of islands. And many of those islands, the population is rather small. And to connect them digitally is very costly, especially if you're talking about fiber optics, submarine cable. So the new technologies that's coming out, satellite technology, low Earth orbits, have actually brought down the costs of digital connectivity. And it's very timely because now we are able to connect a lot of the islands without investing a huge amount of resources to bring them in. And once you provide the connectivity, then you provide online financial services. Before we came into the picture, the Philippines, half of the population did not have bank accounts. So, that part of the population was not part of the economy. Today, with all the connectivity, the numbers have increased tremendously. And so with e-wallets, with online banking, people are able to now be part of this digital economy. Then we upskill, we train them on digital entrepreneurship, on digital marketing skills. Then they now not only become part of the local economy, but part of the regional and international economy. An old person that's doing very nice embroidery in one of the islands can now export their product directly. And cross-platform, there are a lot of e-commerce sites now that grew up from maybe one or two of the countries in the region, but actually is spreading across the different areas of the region. So they're able to utilize these logistics companies, e-commerce companies, digital payments, gateways in order to do that. And this is proceeding in parallel with the DEFA that we're doing. So it's not really DEFA determining this movement. This movement is going on in parallel. And so what government is actually trying to do is addressing, as this technology, as this adoption of these digital platforms proceed, we are observing very carefully how the chemistry is happening here and coming out with enabling maybe regulatory frameworks or enabling policies that will feed and that will nurture this movement. And I think that's where we are at this stage.
Yeah, I think public and private partnership. I think Ms. Dalak maybe can help us jump in by putting your perspective on how to fasten this particular process from financing perspective, from commerce.
Sure, happy to. I think listening to what Ivan and Paksani were saying, I think financial inclusion is very close to our heart. I think we're actually in the process of working together with the Bank of Thailand in the sense that we would like to apply for the virtual bank license in Thailand. However, when I think about financial inclusion, it's a very kind of micro acceleration of development of financial literacy country by country. And so I think we look at the problem kind of at the macros, at the regional level, at the micro levels, and yet we have to believe that, as Paksani was saying, ASEAN, we have this kind of big kind of family mentality, even though we're different countries, but I think we're neighbors, we're cousins, et cetera, and so I think, the key word for me when I think about something like DEFA is it's really truly an enabler, and by definition, an enabler cannot drive real, true impact without the key pillars that are really the kind of strategic forces and the thrusts that are really making the difference. The enablers sit at the bottom. They're not important, but they are there in coexistence with the different initiatives at the country level, at the regional level, and I think they all have to come together holistically. So I think that's the difficult part of something like this, and I think the challenge is going to be at the country by country level, as we all already perfectly aware. I think the drive and the vision is there. I think that the devils is in the execution. How do countries, policymakers, really truly open up for private sector, for kind of sovereign-like entities such as ourselves, to really share, our pain points, our suggestions, and bring to the table a very open discussions, as we are doing, in forums such as WEF, which is in a very neutral ways. The challenge is that outside of such events, things become politically sensitive. Things become, you go into areas of, is this a potential conflict of interest, et cetera, et cetera. So I think those are some of the concerns in terms of how do we move something like this forward. So I think it cannot succeed unless there is really strong conviction at the in-country level. And then we come to the table as a region to problem solve together.
Ms. Fu, you were also once deeply involved in decision-making in the governmental affairs. So the question now is, do we really need, or do we need middle ground strategy to really strengthen the dynamic public-private partnership to really fasten the whole process?
So yes, I think coming from a lot of experience in the private sector now, I think one of the naive concern that I see from the outside in and not knowing what's happening behind the door with all of the government's negotiation is, how do we make sure that at the top level of the governments, whatever we are negotiating for DEFA, knowing that it's going to take years, can predict and preemptively address the new technologies and challenges that come ahead of us. And the unfortunate part is we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what new technology is going to come out and changes that. The last thing we want is all of us to work together and it takes years to come to an agreement, but that agreement become obsolete too soon. Then we have to go back again, and that really kills all of that opportunities that we can unlock, right? And so, however, whether we need a middle ground strategy or not, I think taking in all of this different perspective, and with the private sector moving a little faster, together with technology moving at lightning speed right now, how do we make sure that at the top level in ASEAN and government can make sure the principles that we negotiate for DEFA will hold for a lot longer period of time than addressing the challenges that we see right in front of us right now, but then can't predict what's happening next, right? I think, as Sandy mentioned, the new skills that we have to train for the countries and leave no one left behind, but how do we make sure that we know what that new skills are to teach people? Because if we're trying to teach something that's relevant now but might be obsolete in a year from now, then we have to do that process again, and that would be very costly. So I think for DEFA to work, it definitely takes collaboration across all of the governments in the country, in the regions, but it's also a process of incorporating all of the feedback from all of the sectors as well, including the middle ground, including the private sectors in that agreements to make sure that we have something that lasts for the region for the many years to come and become super mobile in the region for us.
Mr. Agarwal, to respond from what Ms. Fu have said, coming from fastening the whole process and having this kind of dynamic. And what can multinational companies can actually jump in and actually help?
So I think, to my mind, we touched a little bit about the talent, but talent is a very important part of this puzzle. I think each of the, whether it's a multinational company or local champions, they have some unique skill sets. If they invest enough from their side in their contribution to the ecosystem, particularly in the talent side, in both upskilling talent, reskilling talent, as well as creating talent mobility. I think that can be a phenomenal contribution each of the companies can do in their own respective sectors. And it's a win-win-win, back to your point. It's in their interest, it's in the country's interest, and it's, if it's done in a fashion that it's equitable, it's not only done at the top of the pyramid, but also investing in bringing people, I think that can be a phenomenal contribution.
I would like to capitalize this remaining 14 minutes to open up question from the floor.
Hi, Sharil from Malaysia. Ms. Dalat, you alluded a bit to some of the resistance that maybe negotiators would have to face when coming up with the details around DEFA. So I wonder if you could maybe elaborate a bit about what you think, where you think the pushback might be coming from, and maybe Pak Sandi himself, as somebody who's actually in the room, and the others who are negotiators, can share. Is there a sense from within your governments that there are sections within it who are less enthused about DEFA than maybe others?
Ms. Dalat.
Great. Thank you for the question. Not sure if I'm qualified to answer this, I think. But if I may share, kind of what I think from a combination of experience and projection in terms of resistance. I think the challenge or resistance that would likely happen at the in-country level, I speak from maybe looking at, kind of the potential bureaucracies. It's not so much bureaucracies, but I think it's almost an inbuilt characteristic and structural nature of how government bodies work, right? And I think just as Thailand or Indonesia or Philippines may have its own version of committees and bodies within the government that will be accountable or stakeholders in aligning through some of the agreements that DEFA would like to push through. The lack of identifying the right champions from the top, the ownership inside the government bodies, will be the key challenges in driving internal alignment. It comes back down to multi-stakeholders, complexity of stakeholders. So I don't think the spirit of resistance is going to be an issue if there is clarity of the narrative of DEFA, and I think it's pretty clear in terms of potential impact, etc., that it would bring. But identifying the right owners, the right leadership inside the different bodies to push this through, and putting almost like a SWAT team, like kind of operating models in each country that then come together at regional level is probably the way to do it, in my view.
Pak Sandi.
Thank you, Sarif. The line of sort of like the line in the sand for Indonesia in this particular moment, I think, would be online gambling, whereby 40 to almost 50 billion US dollars sort of like being evaporated from our economy through online gambling. And that's from neighboring ASEAN countries. I wouldn't name the nation, but it's very widely publicized. Not in this panel, but as I see Deputy Secretary General of ASEAN, we need the ASEAN way to handle that, because I have about 8 people working in my house, from helping with the gardens and helping with the food and culinary. 2 of them already got really in trouble with online gambling. And suddenly when they just place less than 10 cents into one particular play, they're now in debt to about close to $10,000. And that's linked to fintech, that is illegal fintech, that is offering some sort of like financial assistance to this informal sectors of online gambling, not online gaming. Gaming is something that we want to actually work closer in the ASEAN on a DEFA.
And scammers too. It's clearly a threat to the livelihood in the ASEAN region.
That's right. So we need to develop policies to handle this issue and how we could build, we have about 17,000 islands, the archipelago. I think with the new technology of Elon Musk Starlink, we could drive. I used to have a big portfolio in telecom tower. I think now the cost will be much reduced with the satellite, the low orbit satellites, and I think developing data protections and privacy regulations is key. Incentivizing SMEs. This is how they could move into the digital economy. We kept on saying upskilling, and I think equally important is new skilling and reskilling, with some of the skills no longer going to be the English that they learn from the past wouldn't be fit with the English that Gen Z is now using, and ensuring that AI automation is actually helping the process. Used to be an autopilot, now co-pilot, making sure that jobs will not be threatened in a way. So I think those are some of the line in a sense. And I see Vince here from Dana. When we talk about payment, I think need to be integrated more. I think payment from Thailand to Vietnam to Indonesia, how do we get this digital economy more seamless in the future?
We were having discussion with Vince as well. When I mobilized 15 journalists from Malaysia to really experience and got this exposure from Dana.id, I think what's happening at the ground in Malaysia at this moment, and I could see a lot of SMEs, micro SMEs, especially micro SMEs, started to be exposed and on the implementation on ESG in their businesses. I guess this is what's really important. I think that the understanding as well as the awareness, the readiness to actually really implement, and this is where I think those brands like Odella Group being the umbrella of doing things and been working closely with us and Astro Awani as well. I would like to open, I could see many hands. Yes, gentlemen in the middle. Questions from the floor.
Thank you very much for a very inspiring panel. My name is Jochen Biedermann from the International Digital Economies Association. My question to all of you is, for the country you represent, in 5 years, what would be the top 2 or 3 verticals? You have mentioned already fintech, gaming, gambling, of course. What do you expect in your country will be the prevailing topics?
Right. What do you expect from each country? Let's start with, would you like to go to the question for the ministers or the disruptors? Sir, anyone? Everyone. I think let's Mr. Ivan will take that question.
Well, artificial intelligence has been permeating in many of the conversations that we've been engaged in. And this is not just on the national level, but in a lot of our international agreements. And it's a great disruptor. At the same time, it's a tremendous enabler of skills, of talents, and being able to really explore how it will impact the manufacturing, healthcare, education, and many areas. I think that's where we are putting a lot of attention. But at the same time, also going back to what my colleague has mentioned, we need to address this growing concern of cybercrime and cyber threats. In fact, we're probably observing that the growth of the cybercrime economy probably might be faster and bigger than the regular economy, and they're reaping a lot of the benefits of technology and being a great enabler of their criminal activities. And these organizations, these are no longer small-time robbers or these are large syndicates, very well funded, and actually they're tapping the same talents that we are tapping, and they're paying more. They're paying more, so it has become very attractive. And I think on an international level, there has to be a stronger response, a more comprehensive collaboration among the different governments in order to clamp down on this, whether we're talking about illegal online gambling, child pornography, the phishing, the scamming that's happening. They are cross-border, and so I think our efforts on doing cross-border law enforcement should be developed more. They hide behind jurisdictional shields, operating with impunity in one jurisdiction, knowing that the criminal laws of another jurisdiction won't be able to reach them. So this might be an area where DEFA or other regional or international agreements can look into in developing better law enforcement.
So that wraps up our discourse. I'm so sorry, I wish I have more time to actually continue the discussion. And definitely we're going to have more discussion, we're going to have more conversation revolve around this matter, and would love to see the progress, the likelihood of negotiations completing on time in 2025. I'm Ashwat Ismail, the Editor-in-Chief of Astro Awani in Malaysia. And thank you very much to all of our panelists. Thank you very much to all the audience. I think till the next discussion, and I hope you guys will enjoy this meaningful discussion. Thank you very much.